I don't like early mornings. If I have to, I'll get up for an appointment or work. Always on time, never early. But when I'm only responsible to myself, I do like to linger in bed. Or, let's just say, I've missed a sunrise or two. Still, I checked the forecast last night. There's a chance of some early morning mist at one of my favorite woodlands. There might be an opportunity there, if I can make it in time. So I told myself I'll try and catch that morning mist.
First to capture here this morning, we have this tree that I kind of caught my interest. This kind of gnarly, kind of cool looking tree. So I did one-handed shot with the 80mm and then I switched over to the wide angle, so the 50mm on the Hasselblad, and framed it up a bit more carefully to include a bit more of the background here. And even though the background is kind of messy, I do think it might still work, thanks to the mist, the lovely mist we have this morning, that kind of soften off that background. About measuring, it was shot at f11 at 1/15 of a second, and I just measured down at the tree trunk and put that as my shadows, and 2 stops below the middle grey. I think that will work quite nicely. And the first shot was just no metering, and fingers crossed that that worked as well. I'm going to continue wander on and see if I can find something else before the mist dissipates. Another image, and I broke out the long lens for the Hasselblad here, the 250mm. I am quite glad that I packed all the lenses for the Hasselblad, so I do have a wide, a normal and a long lens here. And I needed that reach here to focus in on this tree here in the background that has kind of some of those orange leaves still on it, and then a couple of other trees right next to it, kind of dark tree, quite saturated from the rain last night. And then the mist again diffuse in the background. And zoomed into that, I think it can be quite a nice image. I am really enjoying this little morning outing. I'm thinking we might start heading back to the car because, the mist is starting to dissipate. And we kind of need that today, because without it, it's just a messy woodland, as we are lacking some leaves on the trees. And it's fairly late in the morning now, it's about 10:30 now, so it's soon going to be like that midday lighting. Messy woodland, harsh midday lighting, that's a hard combination. But it has been a very nice morning out. I'm glad I took the effort and actually got out today. I'm not giving up completely though. As I'm going to start heading back to the car, I'm going to stay fairly close to this valley behind you, because I am noticing the mist is still lingering in that valley. So fingers crossed, we might actually still find one more composition on this morning. So I kind of gave up on the plan of just heading back to the car, because I realized I was really close to the car, and I kind of just wanted to wander around for a bit more in this very lovely area here when there was still some mist. And I noticed one of those trekking marks you can find, and I thought, well, I'm just going to follow that. And it kind of just led me back to where I was before. I didn't really realize that. I must have lost my bearings. But that doesn't matter, because I found this tree here behind us. A very gnarly, cool looking tree that I somehow missed before. That doesn't matter, because I do think it works better as an image now, as the sun has risen and they gotten over the hill over there, sidelighting the scene here, giving some structure to the tree, which I think helps it. And even though it's quite a messy scene, we still had some mist in the background, helping to just diffuse the background, so it simplifies it just slightly. And I do have really high hopes for this image. Some fast notes from my developing later on. I did measure this for f11 1/60 second, and that places the shadow at f5.6 and the highlights at f16. And I ended up doing it at f8 and 1/125th of a second instead. And with that said, time to head back to the car for real this time and get some lunch. You know what? I realized I have a few frames left on the Hasselblad here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put on the little neck strap I have for the Hasselblad and go handheld as I head back to the car. And if I find anything, I'll just put it up on the screen for you. What a lovely outing, and honestly, considering I almost missed the morning mist, I'm really happy with the images. But before we talk about those, I would like to talk a bit about the developing. If you remember, out in the field, I did a few quick notes at one of the scenes. I did that because I realized that frame would dictate how I developed the whole role, because that scene was the one with the highest dynamic range and the one I was the most excited about out in the field. And as some of you know, you can do push and pull developing, or N+ and N- developing, to well add and subtract contrast. And when you do that, you are primarily affecting the highlights, some of the midtones, and the shadows, they hardly move at all. So in a sense, you are kind of stretching the dynamic range on the negative, and making printing and scanning just a tad easier. A good rule of thumb that I use is that you want 5 stops between the shadows and the highlights where you want details. That's a rough simplification of the zone system, but it's usually good enough. So for that keyframe, I needed more separation. And with my spot meter, it saves the readings as f-stops at the top. And in this case, I had f5.6 for the shadows and f16 for the highlights. That's a difference of 3 stops. So to reach 5, I need to add 2, or do an N+2 developing. On this day, I was shooting Kentmere 400, which is still a film I'm getting used to.
and I couldn't find reliable times for M+2 developing in Rodinal, my developer of choice. I did find a few for M+1 though, and they called for around 10 minutes. So I dropped that into the film developer app and let it calculate the M+ developing for me. Or actually M+1 and 2/3, just to give me some room for errors. And in the end, I ended up doing 11 minutes and 15 seconds in Rodinal 1+25, and I did rotary developing in the Yobo tank, as per usual. And the negatives? They do look good. When I view them on the light table, the frame I based the developing around looks about how I would expect. The earlier frames, they do look a bit underdeveloped, but totally workable. Pretty much what I would expect. I'll need to do a few test prints and shoot a bit more of Kentmere before I adjust anything, but for a first try of pushing this film, I'm happy. Alright, enough about the chemistry, let's talk about the images. I'm really pleased. I'm genuinely excited about a few of them. Especially the two with the 250mm. One of them I didn't really talk about out in the field. I kind of just tilted up the camera and found something interesting and took the frame. And that might be my favorite from the day. But all in all, I would consider quite a few from this day quite successful. And if you're a long-time follower of the channel, you know that I'm trying to become a better landscape photographer and take something more than pretty pictures. And part of my plan to become that better landscape photographer is to study other people's work. And I've started by, revisiting some of my old photo books. And when I'm looking at the images from this day, they kind of remind me of Hans Strand's excellent woodland work. Those messy compositions that still somehow feel very calm, in a very subtle color palette. And if you mix that a bit with the Pentti Sammalaht's more gritty, grainier images, well, that's kind of how I feel about these images from this day. Not that I was actively thinking about that when I was out shooting, but that's exactly why I studied other people's work. I wanted to sink in and make myself a bit more aware of my own photography. So yes, I'm happy with the images. I'm looking forward to try and print a few of them out in the darkroom. But that's for another day. For now, thank you so much for watching and tagging along on this morning, where I actually managed to catch the morning mist. I'll see you next time. Take care and